Yeah, these things are garbage from the moment they're manufactured. This act is conditioning school children throughout their formative years to disregard the environment and embrace disposability and consumerism with no regard. And that's something we're super interested in disrupting, and why we as waste activists and waste fanatics focus on school supplies.
You're listening to the Good Dirt Podcast. This is a place where we dig into the nitty-gritty of sustainable living through food, fashion, and lifestyle.
And we're your hosts, Emma and Mary Kingsley, the mother-daughter founder team of Lady Farmer. We're sowing seeds of slow living through our community platform, events, and online marketplace.
We started this podcast as a means to share the wealth of information and quality conversations that we're having in our world as we dream up and deliver ways for each of us to live into the new paradigm, one that is regenerative, balanced, and whole.
We want to put the microphone in front of the voices that need to be heard the most right now: the farmers, the dreamers, the designers, and the doers.
So come cultivate a better world with us. We're so glad you're here. Now, let's dig in.
Okay, so good morning, Mom.
Good morning.
So we were just talking about how we had slept respectively. And if you're listening, this might be something that you think about too. So I actually got this Aura ring. It's like a Fitbit, but it goes on your finger and it can track your sleep and stuff. And it tracks everything: heart rate, sleep, body temperature, takes your steps. And I got like a 98 sleep score last night, is what I wanted to tell you. I'm like the best sleeper. It's the best sleep score ever.
Okay. I have another sleep score device as well. And I got 89 last night. And that's like, I think that might be my highest score ever. So what does that tell you? I have been working on my sleep. I've been trying to, do things to make sure I sleep better and through the night. Last night, I slept really well, but hate to say it, it's probably because the night before I slept terribly because we were on the road and in a hotel and all those blinking green lights and things in hotel rooms and the temperature and the lack of fresh air. And it's really hard. It's rough on the road. The thing about the sleep score device is I feel like I'm being graded. It's sort of this weird feeling like, wait, if I've got a bad sleep score, it's sort of depressing. But I just need to sort of shift that and say, this is information.
It is just data.
Yeah.
So then related to sleeping, what's your morning routine like? What do you do in the morning?
The first thing I do is I meditate for 20 minutes. I did TM. I took the TM course years ago, and I've been very, very good about doing it in the morning. Actually, you're supposed to do it twice a day, but I don't do the afternoon one currently. That can be a goal for spring, I think, is to try to work that back in. But I'm very consistent about the morning one.
TM stands for Transcendental Meditation.
Yes.
And can you speak to how is it like different from regular meditation?
Well, meditation is a very broad term.
Yeah.
And there's lots of kinds of meditation. I mean, you could say you meditate.
Like sustainability.
Yeah. Yes. But, TM has been around for a very long time. And
it's like trademarked.
And it's backed up by like hundreds of studies using this very technique. So, it really has some data behind it, which is why I chose it. It's an investment. It's a lifelong investment. And I feel really good about it. And I have this great tool that I'm using 50%.
Yeah.
So it's a goal. But now it's so much a part of my morning that I'm sort of afraid what would happen if I didn't. It's so entrenched into my waking up that if I didn't do it, I don't think I know what to do with myself. But anyway, in answer to your question, I do that. And then I get up and I come up to my little lair up here, my little attic lair that has become my office over the last several months. And I sit down and I get out my calendar and I get out my almanac and I track the sunrise. I note the time of the sunset. I note the astrological position of the moon. And I also note where we are on the biodynamic calendar. And the whole reason I started this morning routine was because I really wanted to feel connected to the cycles. We talk about this all the time here on the podcast. We certainly talk about it in the almanac and have lots of activities centered around this, being connected to the cycles. And I found that I was always, what time does it get light and what time does the sun go down, and being confused when the time changed. And now I feel like I'm tracking that, and it's really, I like it. I like it very much. It's really a good way to start the day. So, and then I just read and make my plans for what I'm going to do for the rest of the day. So I spend an hour or so in the morning just doing that, just sort of easing myself into the day. And I realize that is quite the luxury working from home. I don't have to get in the car and go anywhere. I consider myself very lucky in that score. But that's what I do. How about you?
That sounds awesome. So my morning routine, I currently am working through The Artist's Way, which is a book by Julia Cameron. It's a 12-week artist recovery program is kind of how she words it. But there's readings every week, and then she requires you to do 3 pages of journaling in the morning. It's called the Morning Pages. And so I've been doing that. I'm on week 5 right now. So, and we're doing it as a group in the Almanac, which is really fun. That's sort of another detail of The Artist's Way is you can do it in groups for accountability and for just to share your experiences together. And I am finding it so much more effective than trying it on my own. I've attempted to do this 12-week thing a few times, and I pretty much drop out around week 5 or 6. Which is where I am now. So it's really fun to do it as a group, and in the Almanac is really fun. And yes, these morning pages, it's part of my morning routine now. And I think that this is going to be the first week where I've done morning pages every single day. I'm usually about 5 to 6 mornings out of the week. But I'm batting 6 for 6 this week. So I think I can do 100%. And I tell you what, it has really changed. It doesn't take me that long. You get all your monkey brain out in the morning, your scattered thoughts, and you have your best ideas in the morning. And just to get them all down is really powerful. And what's fun is that I'm using my plastic-free pen that you got me for my birthday. It's all metal and it's really cool looking, and it comes with extra ink cartridges that I can replace when it runs out.
I'm so glad you mentioned that pen, because going back to my morning routine for a minute, that pen was made by the same company as the planner that I fill in every morning. It's the only zero waste weekly planner on the market. It's 100% curbside recyclable and 100% recycled. And it's such a joy to use it and handle it and write in it and know that it's not going to end up lying on the beach or in the belly of some poor marine animal, and it's not going to end up in the landfill. It is something that's going to be returned to the earth. And I can tell you that, throughout the years we've been doing this and talking about this stuff, that has really deep meaning for me. And I find myself seeking more and more items that are like that for that reason. And the opposite is true too. I use things that I know are going to end up somewhere where they should not. And I find that hurtful. So I'll go as far as saying that products like this are healing. I think healing for me personally, and I will venture to say healing for certainly the earth. My planner, your pen, and so many other really cool items are made by the company we have represented here today with Heather Itzlaw and Nikki Kozlowski. And they are co-founders of Westhuizen Supply Company, which designs plastic-free, vinyl-free, and spiral-free school and office supplies because, and here's their quote, "The mass production of products creating permanent waste is outdated, short-sighted, and reckless."
Yes. Heather and Nikki are truly amazing, and what they're doing is amazing. They're taking this industry, which is really an idea and a culture of school supplies. We talk about it in the episode, how much of a cultural norm this is, that every year we buy new plastic stuff. It's just part of the system. So they came together to address this, and After years of collecting data and public education, they came to understand the scale of the problem. The amount produced annually of plastic outweighs all of humanity, and it's now documented in our air, soil, and water. So Heather and Nikki are going straight to the source, and they are working to prevent plastic from being made.
So Heather, being a parent and frustrated with the annual back-to-school prescription of cheap and disposable plastic supplies, she saw an opportunity to provide a solution for her son's school. So she crowdfunded and stocked each classroom with plastic-free school supplies.
And you'll hear in the episode what happens next. This was another great conversation where our guests really tell it like it is. The school supply industry is filling our oceans and landfills with megatons of trash. Consumers can choose to refuse this. There's a different way to do it. And truly thanks to the paradigm shifting thought and innovations of people like these two creative and passionate women.
They aren't afraid to tell the truth about what they call the staggering disposability cycle in the name of education. So get ready to hear it from Heather Itzla and Nikki Kozlowski of Wisdom Supply Company.
So we are Nikki and Heather, and we are the founders of Wisdom Supply Company. We make plastic-free, vinyl-free, spiral-free school and office supplies. And we are a waste reduction company.
Awesome. What does that mean? What is a waste reduction company?
This category of products, school and office supplies, has generated tens of millions of tons of permanent pollution. And it just keeps growing because we have a decades-old system that continually feeds it. Families are directed by the schools to purchase school supplies for their children year after year for roughly a decade. And all of the products that are offered, that is available, it's all disposable. It's all mixed materials waste. And the only end game for these products is landfill. And with 70 plus million students in this country, all with nothing but garbage supplies to work with, it's generating an epic amount of waste.
Garbage supplies. That's so interesting that you said it like that. Garbage supplies. That's what it is.
It's true.
Yeah, these things are garbage from the moment they're manufactured. I always look at it like it's just garbage that you're going to use for a little while once you bring it home from the store, and then it's on its way to landfill. So you're just interrupting the flow of garbage from the manufacturing to when it finally ends up in landfill. But to tag on to what Nikki is saying, and this decades-old system of rinse and repeat, purchase garbage, throw it away, do it again the next year from really about second grade on through high school, is that this act is conditioning school children throughout their formative years to disregard the environment and embrace disposability and just consumerism with no regard. And that's something we're super interested in disrupting, and why we, as two waste activists and waste fanatics, focus on school supplies. There are endless areas that you can look at how to reduce plastic pollution and vinyl. But school supplies, that's so tied to the psychology of kids and how they're raised, and ultimately what they're inheriting, which is this gigantic mess that we're leaving behind for them. So that's really why this category, it's so prescriptive. It is year after year, and we're forming the way kids see the world.
So every product we design, everything we do, has both the beginning of the life in mind. So we always use 100% recycled materials, and we also consider the end of life. We have good relationships with waste haulers from our many years of waste activism, and we talk about why something is or isn't recyclable. And everything we design is designed to close the loop on waste, because we believe waste is a design flaw. Products can be designed to be 100% recyclable. And we've done these for years and years, done these locker cleanouts. And we would go to schools, and at the end of the year, we would see what was happening with all of these supplies, and students just, it's the end of the year. They want to start their summer, and there's nowhere else for these supplies to go other than landfill. So we would collect everything and look at it and think about these products and redesign them.
To give an example of a school prior to the pandemic, when all schools nationwide closed for 2 years, which had a outsized impact on a school supply company like ours. But prior to the pandemic, when we really put the classroom stocking program, the pilot program, to a test at a local school, we kicked off by doing a locker clean out. So we looked at everything those kids were throwing out of their lockers and desks and backpacks on the last day of school, because they just want to go start their summer, and sorted it and really dug into what they were throwing away. Then that fall, we stocked their classrooms with zero waste school supplies, vinyl-free, plastic-free, spiral-free supplies. And then we did another locker clean out at the end of that year. And it surprised even us, because it was very clear that what we did wasn't a practice of waste reduction. It was entire waste elimination. So we went from just a dumpster full of stuff these kids were throwing out of their lockers to post-classroom stocking program. There wasn't enough to fill a paint bucket. There just wasn't any stuff. So we're big believers in classroom stocking. And not only does it make sense to have the teacher or educators in charge of handing out what is needed as it is needed, but I think we can all agree kids are not great inventory managers. So if you load these kids and their backpacks up with all of this brand new stuff at the beginning of the year, common sense would tell you it's going to be lost between desks and backpacks and lockers somewhere, and home somewhere throughout the year. They just shouldn't be given this much stuff that they're supposed to manage for 9 months. So that's when we realized that classroom stocking isn't waste reduction, it's waste elimination across the board. So we're the biggest fans of that approach. And on our site right now, we invite schools and classrooms and teachers join the pilot program. There's no financial requirement. It's join it and learn that the first 3 things we recommend, they don't cost anything. We don't view waste reduction as go out and purchase a bunch of zero waste stuff. That's not our approach at all. The first 3 things we recommend have nothing to do with purchasing anything. You can start them today in your classroom or with your kids at home. So if you go to our site, you can join the pilot program, and you don't have to be a teacher. You don't have to be a student. You can just join and learn what it is we do and what's the approach that we advise schools and classrooms.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for naming it what it is. It's saying it is garbage. And we're training our kids to want, buy, and use garbage for a little while. Like you said, it's a conditioning. And while the adults in the room and all over the place just seem to go along with it and say, oh, okay, let's do this. How many years has this been going on? Decades. So here you guys come and say, this is garbage. We're going to stop. Yay. Thank you. Kudos. I think that's wonderful. I'm curious about, how do you cast your net? Do you go to area schools and go in there and say, we want to change this? Do people hear about what you're doing and reach out to you? Do you do entire school systems? How do you enter? What's your entry point? There's so many schools.
Yeah, I think that's what we have learned over the years. I would say, yes, we've done all of the above to everything you mentioned. And then a huge interruption of the pandemic. Really, every school in the country closing for a few years, tossed and turned how we approach things and what we do. So we have experience working across, we work with homeschoolers. We worked with public and private schools. We've worked with a variety of ways that schools pay for these things because every school is a little bit different. So it's not a one size fits all approach. Some schools have where the school purchases the supplies for the students, and that's included in their tuition. We even had a public school that did that. Then there are schools where the parents are given the list and they pay for everything. And then there are the hybrids where the schools pay for part of it and the parents pay for the rest of it. And then there's homeschool. So there's so many different ways. So the way, after all these years, that we jump into it is we invite you to join the pilot program and learn from other schools how they are doing it and how they are affording it. And again, the first things we recommend cost nothing. A school can go a full year, honestly, without purchasing anything new when you consider how much most classrooms already have in cupboards and left over from a prior year. And then how much these kids, typically families, still have at home from prior years. It's just we're accustomed to just get everything brand new. And there's this really misguided belief that buying your kids this new stuff for the school year, these glitter binders and new pens and a new pack of pencils, is somehow going to make them better learners. Like they'll have a better school year. They're so excited about learning. It's not an excitement about learning. It's retail therapy. It's excitement about buying new stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we enter into it. Don't take that approach. This is not a come buy all new stuff and now you're going to be zero waste. It's the same for every school in what our first three steps, the first three things we recommend. And it's such an odd one, but the number one thing I want schools to do, whatever their size, first thing is set up what we call a last plastic marker box. It could be a bucket, whatever the receptacle is. It's something, but it's meant to be kept out in the classroom for everyone to see. And it's where you put markers, pens, dry erase, whatever it is, all this plastic junk, when it dries out or it's empty. Keep it there. And we have PDFs on the site you can download and tape to the outside of the box to explain what is the problem and what is going to happen with this stuff. And really to engage the conversation, kids need to see it. Teachers need to see it, because if we're just putting it in a trash can and throwing it away, wherever that is, every time a pen runs out or something, no one's learning anything. We can hear stuff about, oh, there's all this plastic pollution. But when you see what your classroom is contributing to this on a regular basis, it's a lot easier to have those jumping off questions like, oh, what can we use instead? And what did people use before plastic infected everything? It didn't used to be a thing, all these plastic markers and dry erase and all of that. So this is part of joining the classroom stocking program. This is our first thing right off the bat. Set up that box, start to have the conversation about what's in that box, and then why you shouldn't send it away to a marker recycling program for recycling. It's a misnomer. It's not recycled, it's incinerated. And learn about that. What does that mean? What does incineration do? What's the problem with that? So we actually really lean into and ask the schools and the students to lean into making peace with throwing that in a landfill, super containing it so that we can safely send it to a landfill. But when we can send these things to recycling, quote unquote, recycling programs, it takes away any guilt that you would feel about this stuff. Oh, they'll make new markers out of it. That's not true.
Right.
Just like delegates the responsibility.
And then you feel better about buying new markers. And that's the whole point. So when you understand that it's actually a marketing scheme, not a recycling program, and that's why these big companies that we've all heard of support these. They'll pay for you to send your markers back because you'll go buy new markers. It's genius, but it's horrific in terms of what it's doing to the planet.
And our experience over the years with doing this is that students love learning this stuff. There's always such a positive response. They're curious. They don't want to be insulated from these realities, and they want to be part of the problem solving. And so it is so critical to involve students in this process, in the waste reduction process, in the last plastic marker box. They love learning about it, and they want to be part of the solutions.
That's so cool. I want to circle back. I think you were getting there, Heather, telling us about the 3 steps in the pilot program. Is that right? The pilot program has 3 steps. And the first is this: set up a last plastic marker box. Is that correct?
Correct.
And then go on and tell us about 2 and 3.
Okay. So to simplify all of this, number 2 is most classrooms have inventory in it already. There are colored pencils and crayons and stacks of paper and pens and pencils. That stuff, it's just used so it doesn't look as beautiful as the day these kids were so excited to get it from the big box store, but it's there. So what we ask teachers and students to do is take an inventory of what's in the classroom, really dig out the cupboards, get all the stuff out of there, and then clean, sort, and sharpen. Because when you sharpen all those colored pencils and organize them by color, get creative about it. You're making a student store within your classroom, but those things should be used up. So once the pencils are sharpened and the erasers are organized, and I also encourage sharpen the crayons. I've been surprised by hearing from parents or schools, what do we do with old crayons? You use them, you sharpen them, and you use them. And we get away from this. Those are used crayons. So let's just get a new box. Use them up. There is a great crayon recycling program. So when they get down to small nubs, there's a great organization that we'll have a link to on our website that collects them, makes new crayons out of the tiny little nubs you can no longer use for kids going through cancer treatment.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So we'll link to that on our site. But in general, there's so much in your classroom. There's so much inventory there to pull from. And I think it helps to normalize using non-brand new things when you do it as a whole classroom, rather than you're the kind of kid whose mom makes you go to school and reuse your old shabby binder or something. If the whole class is doing it and it's something that the educator normalizes, then it gets buy-in from all of the kids. I'm going to sidestep this whole conversation now. I just mentioned shabby binders. That's the one product where we push for reconsidering and purchasing a different binder. Nikki and I are like staunchly anti-vinyl, particularly when it comes to supplies for kids. And the reasons are, just Google what's in vinyl, and it's just a nasty material. So that's where we take a moment to plug our product, which is ours is the only binder on the market that is designed to be kept out of the landfill. Ours is designed to be repaired. So you take the cover off, you put that in paper or cardboard recycling, and you attach a new one. And we think it's so great for students on so many levels. For one, it's vinyl free. And for two, teaching a child to repair and reuse something is so uncommon. And so we've had only great interactions with students and teachers around this product. So that's when we say, okay, I don't encourage you to use that vinyl binder forever, because it's not our favorite material. So make peace with that's going to landfill, like the tens of millions of vinyl binders, like literally everyone that's ever been made still exists on the planet as pollution. So yeah, that's the one. I sidestep that and say nothing. You can stock your classroom and start the whole year and you don't need anything new. But if you use a vinyl binder, we do recommend switching that one out.
And it's funny, it's vinyl free, and we often get the question, what's it made out of then? because we're so conditioned to use these plastic supplies that we can't even imagine what material it's made out of. And this is a conversation for another day, but it's not bioplastic. It's 100% recycled cardboard and chipboard. So it's a thick,
Super sturdy. Yeah.
super, very sturdy. And the cover can be turned around inside out so you can reuse that same cover the next year, or placed within paper recycling.
That's so cool. And I guess this also might be tangent, but I would assume that most binders is actually vinyl covering cardboard, right? Or is that's so funny because we don't even realize that we're already using cardboard binders.
Yeah.
We're just covering them in vinyl for basically no reason, because it's not like the vinyl particularly stays fresh long anyways. Like, it's very interesting.
We have great pictures on the site of vinyl binders and what they look like after a year. And it's gross.
Yeah. Wow, that's so interesting. Another thing I love about your whole approach to this transition for classrooms and this culture, it's really a culture shift, is that you come into it and reverse engineer it, or you have reverse engineered it, and that's how you come to the classrooms and to this way of introducing it. So you start with you start with what you have and then get to a place where you're hopefully using plastic-free school supplies, but that's not what you go in with, because so much of this space is all this, and when I say this space and this sustainability, zero waste, lower waste things, so much of it is we lead with, oh, you need these products. And I really admire how you guys have made such a concerted effort to not lead with that, even though that is your business, is these products. So it's a really tricky dance, but you guys do it really well. So it's really amazing.
Oh.
Yeah.
You were asking about steps 2 and 3.
Sorry, I got us off.
So
We're getting there.
So 2 is taking stock of what you have, but also for the teachers that will do it, invite the families in your classroom to send these things in with their students, because most parents have accumulated stuff at home. And a lot of that comes from on those back to school shopping lists. It may say, bring in 4 folders or 4 blue folders or whatever. But you had to buy it in a pack of 6. So you keep the extra 2 at home. And then so we end up with our own stash of stuff at home. And most of us have junk drawers with extra pens and erasers and extra pencils and just stuff you end up with. It's like Nikki and I joke that every house has its own gyre of this kind of stuff that accumulates over time. And I think many families are more than happy to send that stuff off to school because it's just clutter in the house, but it can be put to great use in the classroom. So we encourage teachers to invite families, send in your pens, and then let the kids turn that in. That's the student store. All the red pens in one cup, all the blue pens over here, stacks of paper, consolidate that stuff. And again, normalize using it. So it's not like one kid feeling like their no waste mom is trying to get them to reuse this stuff that's not cool in the classroom. It's making it cool for the whole classroom. And the reason is waste reduction. And kids get on board with that if everybody's doing it. So that's number 2. And then number 3 is once you've done that, once you're really looking at that last plastic marker box and you've brought in stuff from home and you've consolidated and you've made your own little student store within the classroom, that's when we encourage teachers to have the conversation with their students about what do we really need this year? What do we really use? And even talk about notebooks. That's something Nikki and I found at every locker clean out we've ever done, is that most notebooks are discarded with more than 3/4 of the pages unused. So rather than going out or asking students to buy 5 or 6 notebooks, one for every subject, and what could you do different? So it's a lot of work with your students, talk to them, look at what we're using, look at what we're wasting, and say, what can we do differently going forward? Before you even start to go shopping and think about, oh, look at all this no waste stuff we can buy. What do you use and what do you need? So those are steps 1 through 3. It's a lot of just like taking stock and not wanting people to just run out and buy a bunch of new stuff, because you're just going to waste that too. Maybe it's stuff you don't even need.
That's funny you said that, because I realized when you said most of the notebooks are thrown away with 3/4 of the paper left in them, I realized I'm writing in it. I'm taking notes in a notebook right now that I had in college. And there's notes in here from a college paper on Ethan Frome.
Wow.
I know. We've just cleaned out my parents' house and they had all these old notebooks and stuff. And what do you know? So I'm using it. Isn't that funny? I know. That's wonderful. So yeah, I pat myself on the back there. But I have to ask you about the notebooks, the spiral notebooks. I have always tried to recycle those, rip the wire out. And what do you do with those? And what do you all promote that is an alternative to the spiral bound notebook? Or is there one?
So Nikki and I both have been the type of people as well to rip all the paper out of a spiral notebook, put that in recycling, and then you put the spiral in trash. You did your part, and that's great. The trouble is that these things are mass produced by the zillions. So you get a handful of really do-gooder people who are going to tear that out and be really dutiful and do it. When you consider the scale of what is produced, and I think this really hit Nikki and I at one particular locker cleanout, where we thought, you know what? While the kids are loading up all the stuff that we're going to go through, let's just sit here and tear all the paper out. I don't know how many we got through, Nikki. Maybe it was like 30 notebooks or something. And we're like, I'm done with this. Yeah, this is crazy, because it was piling up so fast. And there was what are we going to do? There's no keeping up with what is produced. So while that may make us feel good on a personal level to do that, if what it does is allows you to feel good about buying another spiral notebook because you think I tear the pages out, there's the problem, because we're supporting a product that by and large is responsible for basically trapping trees in landfill. That's what spirals do, right? Because they take all that perfectly recyclable paper and trap it in a landfill forever. And once anything's in a landfill, it's game over. There's nothing that goes back to compost or goes back to the natural world. It's locked away from the natural world for the rest of time. So that's how we feel about spiral notebooks and why we'll never make anything that's spiral.
Yes. So that's what we say. We say waste is a design flaw, because the design of spiral, nothing should be designed to where you're having to rip all of the pages out and sit there. It's just poor design. So our solution to notebooks is similar to our solution to planners, in that when Heather and I were looking for a planner for ourselves, we could not find one that wasn't spiral bound. It wasn't book bound. All of the planners out there were all mixed materials, landfill waste. So we worked with local waste haulers to design a planner and a notebook that can go straight into paper recycling. So no synthetic cover materials. It's recycled cardstock. And our binding method is the difference and is what makes ours 100% recyclable. And our notebooks are, I don't want to say special, but our notebooks are important because we design notebooks with fewer pages. Because when you're given a notebook with over 180 pages, you're not likely to fill that throughout the year. Students are writing less. I don't think I wrote that much ever in my life. So the philosophy behind our notebooks is once you've finished a notebook, fewer pages, then you get a new one. But it's that feeling of completing and finishing a notebook and then placing it and paper recycling or keeping it if you like to keep your notebooks like I do. But it's the same story for student weekly planners. Heather and I were hauling hand trucks worth of student planners to the dumpster because they're all spiral bound and laminated. So we've designed a student weekly planner, again, can go straight into paper recycling. And we're working on a new project called the 28-ton project. And the 28 tons refers to the amount of recyclable paper we want to prevent from ending up in landfill by offering a 100% recyclable student weekly planner. And we have information on our website for schools to sign up and learn. And we have a short animated video. And Heather, do you want to talk about the video?
Sure. There will be a link on our site. You can go download and share the video. And we want this to go viral. Every share gets us a little closer to keeping 28 tons of trees out of the trash. And it's just a toe in the water. We're just trying to demonstrate this is 28 tons in 1 year. We're just a fraction of schools out there by switching a single product. So many schools out there issue student weekly planners to the kids, and switch that one thing to a 100% recyclable version, and we can keep 28 tons of trees out of the trash. What can happen from there when we demonstrate that and schools understand their ability to have this immense impact on waste prevention, the floodgates can open, because you realize, oh my God, that's happening every year with just planners. And we're talking millions and millions of tons that can be prevented. We're just trying to prove it with this one first program.
Is it 28 tons for an academic year? Or what are the parameters of those 28 tons?
Yes. So it's 1 year of not issuing spiral bound student planners, and instead issue the planner, but just it's a 100% recyclable one. So we've set that goal. And the reason we've set this goal and how we arrived at the 28 tons is the quantity that we need to produce to reach a price that schools can afford. That's what drove it, because that's the challenge. Anyone can go out and make a zero waste product or a recyclable product. It's the scale. So if we just produced, 200 of them, we'd have a $20 per unit student planner. So we need to get it. We need the price for the schools to be competitive with the garbage spiral bound version that they're buying. So that means we need to produce a lot of them, which is why we need this to go viral. We need enough people to buy in that we have the volume to keep the price right. That allows us to prevent 28 tons of literal trees in trash. And it's such a worthy cause, and it is just a tiny eye opener to the potential of waste reduction that is so easy. It's like criminal not to do it in a way, really.
This is so amazing. The big thing you're doing is shining a light on it, and at the same time offering a solution. That's just huge and tremendous. And until we shine a light on things like this, people are just going to keep behaving the same way. And what you just described about the paper in the landfill, it's the exact same thing about food. We say it over and over on here. People don't realize that food doesn't compost in the landfill. They don't realize that paper doesn't compost in a landfill. And what you said about once it's in a landfill, it's locked away from nature. And what else? You have some things in your notes about what happens or does not happen in a landfill. So if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Recently, Nikki and I did a survey. We're big on surveys. We are constantly getting customer feedback, and it helps drive the design of everything we do. But we recently did a survey with teachers, and we had about 600 teachers participate in it. Half of them were unaware that landfills don't produce compost, that if you put an apple core or a piece of paper or whatever it is that's natural in a landfill, that it doesn't become part of nature again. So I thought that was really interesting. And again, this goes back to learning these things and these steps. It doesn't cost anything. And discussing them with your students in your classroom, it can start to change behavior without any money having to or to spend anything, because we hear that so often. In fact, I'll back up a little bit, because this has changed over the years. When Nikki and I first started doing this, that's all we heard. Is it going to cost more? Will this be more expensive than buying
Yeah.
disposable garbage?
We don't have the
And
budget.
Yeah.
yeah, we
No
don't
one
have
has
the
the
budget.
budget.
So yeah, it always
Yeah.
felt like there was this, that's so nice what you're doing for the earth. I mean, we can't help you, but
Cute.
that's really,
Yeah.
it did. It felt like that. It was a little dismissive, and people were just certain it will cost more, so we can't do it. And over time, how we've discussed this with people is because we got dismissed a fair amount, never work. It's more expensive, so it'll never work. And I liken it to early organic farming, where if you remember when that was really starting to take hold and there was all the mockery around Whole Foods and Whole Paycheck, and it's just a lot of jokes about the elitism of organic food. But those organic farmers and what they were doing, so important. And yes, their products were more expensive in the beginning because they're swimming upstream. They were doing what no one else was doing. I liken that to what we were doing in our first years. Someone had to do this. In order for us to scale and make it affordable for everyone, we have to start somewhere. But what has evolved is when that is all Nikki and I used to hear when we would introduce the concept of what we were doing, I don't really hear that anymore. Now what you hear is, how do we get started? How can you help my school do this? We make so much waste at our school. Please help me. Please help our classroom. And the price stuff I think we still do here is, look, our school we do not come from an area that can afford to do this. And we still encourage you, join the pilot program. There's so much you can do that doesn't cost any money. And when you approach school supplies very differently, it doesn't cost more. And that's something Nikki and I learned, going on a tangent, but that was something we learned with the first school we ever stocked. They gave us a back to school shopping list and said, this is what we ask our families to get. So let's see what you can do for us that's similar to that. And they said, we don't want it to cost families more than $60 to $70 per family. And I said, and we took that list and we got everything on it, did the Staples shopping, and it was like $140. So there's this disconnect. Teacher can make a long list, but if you're not putting prices with it, it's all fine and good to say we don't want it to cost more than $60. But the reality is it costs over $100. So we stocked the classroom with everything the kids needed for the year. And because that was a shared expense spread over everyone and everything was purchased in bulk, I think, Nikki, our highest price per classroom, I think that was for 8th grade, was $75 per student. But what that also took in, and this might be getting too into the weeds, but it speaks to one of the ways that we approach how to stock a classroom, is say there are 20 students in the classroom and you've got the total that all the supplies cost. Depending on what the school felt was right, we might divide that cost by 16 families. That means 4 families who are unable to participate or unable to contribute financially to the classroom, they're covered. So that every student in the classroom gets the same supplies. There's nobody who couldn't afford it. So that $75 approach per student took that into account, and it covered students whose families weren't able to contribute. So that's just one approach, that one way we offer for classroom stocking programs to take place.
So that creates equity in the classroom as well. It eliminates waste and it eliminates inequity.
Yeah, it's like a school uniform approach to school supplies. Everybody's got the same stuff.
Yeah. Can we go back just a little bit to pre-Wisdom Supply Company and you two, and what made you start it? And if there was an aha moment in there that made you say, we need to come to make this a thing. I don't know. What can you tell us a little bit about that, or a particular story in there?
So when I first really was becoming aware of what we're globally facing in terms of plastic pollution, I became obsessed with it. And I started seeing the waste that was coming out of my son's school. So this is back when they were in middle school, and they're in their 20s now. And because they were at a small school, the school allowed me to go out and source everything I could find that was as zero waste as I could find it. I purchased it all, and then the families from the school reimbursed me. And that's where I started to I was just doing it as a volunteer effort because I couldn't bear this cycle that I was seeing at the same time that I'm learning, oh my God, we're in a lot of trouble when it comes to plastic pollution, and we shouldn't be teaching kids this. So that was great, and it worked great, and I just did it as just a volunteer. But eventually your kids grow up and you leave the school, and after my kids were out of the school, they were like, but wait, how do we keep doing this? And then another school, local school, said, will you do what you do for that school for our school too? And then this overlaps with where Nikki and I come to meet one another.
So Heather and I were both involved with different organizations, different nonprofits, and we would frequently run into each other at events because there are many plastic pollution events. And I had come at this more from a restaurant background. I was working in restaurants and bars and working on disposable foodware and takeout and straws and how that was affecting restaurant composting. And I was also with my nonprofit, not my nonprofit, but the nonprofit I was volunteering with, giving presentations to students and working with students on going to restaurants and speaking to them about their takeout containers. And Heather, I had learned about what Heather was doing. So there was just a natural, I don't like the word synergy, but there is a natural synergy in what we were both working on. And Heather approached me and told me about how she wanted to turn this volunteer effort into a company, and asked if I would work on it with her. And from that day back in, I think it was 2015 when we had our first discussion, we have been working together every single day since that day. And we both read Let My People Go Surfing and the B Corp Handbook. And from the very beginning, we wanted to build a company that was structured to do well and do good in the world. And that's why our B Corp certification was so important to us from the start.
That's awesome. And when did you get B Corp certified?
2019.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. It was nice to have read that book, the B Corp Handbook, and Yvonne Schrinard's book, the founder of Patagonia, Let My People Go Surfing, to read both of those before we incorporated, because it meant that we were approaching it with the intention of getting that certification.
Yeah.
And it's still super important to us both. I feel really proud of it. And it forms how we do everything in the company.
Yeah.
This is an aside, but the experience you had with the school supplies and that feeling of just it's almost like it hurts your feelings, or it's painful in a way to see things like this happening. And I can relate, and Emma can relate, and we have that experience almost everywhere we go, because you see all these things that are just out of control and no one's thinking about it. One place that really has gotten me in recent years is the dentist. You go and they give every person that walks in there every day, week in, week out, a plastic bag of plastic stuff, toothbrush, dental floss.
The single-use
thing.
flossy things.
And I started talking to my dentist about it. And I said, I can set you up. I can find you bamboo toothbrushes. I can find you tooth tablets. We have a marketplace. I can set you up. I won't charge you anything. Just let me. And they go, oh, it's not in our budget. We can't do it. And we're so sorry. All these gabillions of toothbrushes are everywhere. And
they don't pay for those plastic bags either.
I know.
That's like from the toothpaste companies giving out samples. It's all marketing.
So I've been thinking about that. I don't know, who would you talk to about that? And I've even thought, should I take it on as a personal mission to go into dental offices and say, and they go, how about this? every patient doesn't have to have a new toothbrush. You don't have to give one away. How about having a bamboo toothbrush there for sale and discount it, whatever you would have paid, whatever. Anyway.
What's interesting about that, Mom, is thinking about that. It's almost not that they're just getting shipped all of these things and then so they're distributing them. So it's really like you would need to talk to the companies that are sending out the free sample that, I don't know.
I have a recommendation.
Okay.
And it's a Trojan horse, and the horse is the students, young people. When Heather and I were approaching restaurants separately in our own volunteer efforts, we can go in there as crazy plastic ladies who are concerned about the environment, and it's easy to tell us no. It's easy to say, oh, that's nice, but no. It's so much harder to look a young person in the eye and tell them, no, I'm not going to make this simple switch or this decision that hurts your future because of XYZ. So when you can talk to students about these problems and empower them to go into these establishments, be it a restaurant, be it a dentist office, and make these switches, and instead of speaking with the large companies that offer these samples, because they're never going to stop. They're too ingrained. They're not going to stop handing out samples and hurting their revenue. But the dentist office can make the decision not to hand out samples, to refuse them and not hand out any samples. You don't have to spend a ton of money on bamboo toothbrushes to hand those out because everyone already has a toothbrush. But having students go in and educate business owners and establishments about the problem of plastic pollution and how much trouble we are in, you're going to have a lot more success with change when students are behind the mission.
It's true. I think these bags, like you mentioned, Mary, it's just a continuation of the goodie bag way, right? Like when kids go to a birthday party and they get a goodie bag filled with stuff that falls apart by the time you get to the car, or they've lost half of it and it's some rubber bouncy ball. It's just this approach to things is the problem. And we start them young. That idea, you can go to the dentist's office and you get this silly bag tied up and it's got all the goofy stuff in it. I don't know. It's retail. I don't know. You get stuff and it makes you happy for a minute, but it doesn't.
And guess what? Now, when I go to the dentist, they don't offer that to me anymore. I think.
There you go. See,
I think they look at me like, that's the lady. They're giving him to everybody else, but not me.
They marked your file.
They have marked my file.
That sort of goes into, I think, our question about what gives you hope in the shadow of this plastic behemoth that we face. Since you guys work with it every single day, even the work that you're doing is as positive as it is, and it's so
transformative,
inspiring what you're doing.
Yeah.
I don't even know I think it would be so hard because you're sitting side by side with that reality every single day. And so many of us are so lucky to be able to ignore it. You don't. So it must be hard.
The problem is so astronomical and it's so deeply ingrained in our world. So it can feel crippling and it can feel very overwhelming. But what always gives us a feeling of positivity and excitement and optimism is talking to students, is talking to young people. It's honestly our favorite part of what we do because kids have a closer connection to what is right and wrong, particularly when it comes to anything that hurts animals or people. It's a pretty immediate emotional response of, we don't need plastic markers anymore. They do what? And it's exciting. And it's exciting to see what solutions they come up with and their gears start to turn. And teaching them, bringing them on this waste reduction process, that's what gives us hope because they get so excited about it. And adults, the older we get, we often grow more detached from these strong emotions and all of these problems because we're just faced with bills and so many problems that we have to deal with. We can't stop and care about every single thing all the time. We wouldn't get anything done in a day. But kids are able to see so clearly what the path is. So
I know. I wish
educating
kids could be the decision makers.
Yeah.
This problem would be solved if kids were the decision makers in all of this.
Oh, that's so true.
And we want, by the time they grow up, these kids that we're talking to, we hope that they're not jaded by economics or what their bosses are telling them that they have to do and blah, 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 to end up going, oh, ugh, yeah, this is that we can't do anything about it. It's not in our budget and blah, blah, blah. So how do we preserve that youthful, raw energy to go into adulthood and keep this going?
I think we need to stop insulating kids from what the problem is and invite them to take part in solutions. There are images and things that I think families have felt like, oh, I don't want my kids to see these pictures of, say, an albatross whose guts are filled with bits of plastic they've eaten from the ocean. And I don't know if we've mentioned the logo for our company is an albatross for this reason. It's a species profoundly affected by plastic pollution. And many people have seen on the internet images of albatross that have passed away from starvation due to all the plastic that they've eaten that can't pass through their system. And it can be an instinct for some families or parents to feel like, oh, it's upsetting. I don't want my kids to see that. They should see it. This is the reality of what it is. It's okay to be sad about that because that can inspire us to change. It's not to despair over we can't have any effect on this and we can't change it. Yes, we can. We totally can. And it's simple and it doesn't cost money to stop using some of this stuff. So inviting kids, that goes back to what Nikki was saying about hope. It's the kids and they get it. And the less we try to insulate them, the better. And then we also need to self-reflect, I think, as the adults in the room, that it's not the kids thinking, oh, I need to go get brand new stuff every year. That's really the parents. We have made that the culture. And we are as caught up in the excitement of taking them back to school shopping as they are. And it goes back to that flawed philosophy of if we get them brand new stuff, they're going to learn so much. They're going to love their education more. No, it's just the act of shopping. That's all that was. That stuff dies off pretty quick into the school year. That new pack of Post-it notes and markers is not somehow bumping up the IQ. It's just shopping. That's all it is. We have a funny collection of stuff we haven't been able from our locker cleanouts. There are just certain things that we hold on to because of the irony. And so we have pictures of some of that stuff up on the site. Like one of my favorites is it's a spiral bound notebook with a plastic cover. And it's all in glitter all over the cover. It's make today amazing. And then the kid never used it and it's in the trash.
Yeah.
I'm like, that was a pretty amazing day. And then it's here forever. So we have a bunch of stuff like that, these goofy things that you get swept up into purchasing for your kid to have this great school year. It's just garbage and it does nothing to help their education. So I think, our hope is all in the kids because it's often the parents we get swept up in what it is we're pretending that they need for their education. Why is it our grandparents and great grandparents didn't have any of that and somehow seem to make it through their education without glitter pens and.
Yeah, I was going to say we need to own our own projections as parents. And those are our feelings. My child's going to feel deprived if they don't have that bag of new stuff to start the school year. Your child, as you all have just been explaining, is going to be interested and concerned and curious about this problem and what they can do to change things. That's what I think. I truly think that. And it's the same with, we talked about back to school in the fall. We did a bonus episode just talking about this stuff. And we had one about Halloween more recently. It's the same thing. We take
It's just emotional nostalgia,
detritus.
Yeah.
And we glom it onto the kids. And certainly because of my generation and the generation that raised my kids, there's a lot of so much unconscious consumerism that we need to change that, make it conscious right now. Shine a light on it, call it what it is. This is garbage. This is in the landfill for gazillions of years. This is what's contributing to climate change. And these are the behaviors that each of us can start adapting to make change. So
I'm going to start using the word garbage supplies. That's so
garbage
good.
supplies. Another thing, I'll tell this little aside. Years ago, 30 years ago? I hate to admit it. No, 25. I was like green school mom or the environmental volunteer person. And I would say, let's stop saying throw something away. Let's just say we're throwing it in the landfill. The language, throw it away, means you don't have to think about it anymore. It's gone away. If you say, oh, we're going to throw that in the landfill, the kids are going to go, what? Do I really want to do that? But of course,
Words matter.
On.
Yeah.
It didn't catch on.
You should bring that back.
You got to keep doing it. Yeah. Like Nikki and I say what that means when you say, I'm going to throw something away. That means away from you, where you are now. It's here forever. And often, and this is particularly the case with plastics, and why one of the million reasons Nikki and I are so obsessed with this category is throwing something away from you means it's often going to a developing country and becoming that person's plastic nightmare trash. So there is no away, just away from you.
What does slow living mean to you guys?
We believe that slow living approach to the classroom. And again, back to those first three things we asked. We're not saying run out and go buy a bunch of sustainable things. Slow down, have a conversation, set up a display in your classroom, use up what you already have, then consider what are the things we actually need. We really do believe in a slow living approach to graduating your way out of kind of this mess that we've gotten ourselves into with this decades old practice of buy, throw away. So that's how we see slow living in the classroom. Really ultimate high up there, involve the students. If they walked in to the classroom tomorrow and all the wasteful stuff was gone, they threw it all away, away from them. And it was replaced with fancy new zero waste stuff, you've lost so much potential to teach and to learn and to help kids think about stuff differently.
The whole sustainable living thing is not, and we've said this many times even during this hour, it doesn't mean going out and buying supposedly sustainable products. It's so much more than that. And what you all have achieved, you said now people say, how can we get our school to do this? How can we get involved in this? Whereas when you first started out, they were like, oh, sorry, we can't help you. We'd like to see a little more of that in the sustainable fashion space. We'd like to see more people saying, how can I get away from fast fashion? And more people are, but it needs to be even more. Same thing. And like it has happened, I think food is further along, as you were saying. And in the beginning, the organic farming, the organic food, people resisted because of the cost. And now there's more understanding about why and how important it is and how cheap food is no bargain. Cheap anything is no bargain. Low cost does not mean your advantage, folks. That's hard to get through our heads.
And done with the right approach, it doesn't need to cost more. I think that's a tired way of looking at it. Oh, it's so expensive to eat healthy. No, it's not. Maybe if you're buying everything prepackaged, super processed or something, that's an expensive way. But it's not. I think we can move on from thinking that approaching things sustainably is more expensive. Waste is expensive. And waste is absurd. Buying things and throwing them away because they're disposable, that's, I don't know, maybe it was cheaper to go to the market and get this big pack of disposable stuff. But really, over time, you just keep doing that and keep doing that and keep doing that. Yeah. You're spending far more money in that approach. There's a difference of buy one good thing rather than a million little disposable things. Just have one.
Cheap things actually end up being more expensive. And it turns things on its head, and people aren't used to looking at it that way. But we can't afford the cheap things on so many levels. But that's hard. That's a hard concept.
Just separate from that reality.
Yeah.
It's not immediate. And so it's really hard for us to wrap our minds around that. But some of us do. And so that's why we're here. Or some of us dare to try.
I think more people are. I feel a tide is turning in a lot of ways. And Mary, like you said, you're starting to see it in fashion, and we're seeing it in food. And you could close your eyes and just reach out and grab any category of anything that could use a rehaul in terms of waste. It's just what we've become as a society. And we look at school supplies as low-hanging fruit because it's such a, like, why are we doing it this way? It's so wrong, and it's so repetitive. It's literally a prescription for garbage year after year. So we're like, that's the category we've got to go after.
It's so applicable to everything. It's applicable to everything else, every other niche, the dentist bag, the takeout stuff. It's the same story everywhere. And as individuals and small companies or whatever, we have to pick our one little thing and do that the best we can. But the lessons and the realities are pretty applicable across the board. Very cool. All right. What does the good dirt mean to you? And you can both answer it. Or Nikki, you want to take a stab at this one?
I'd love to. So when we were talking about this, we were thinking we took the good dirt pretty literally, in a literal context, down to the microorganisms and soil. And we could nerd out all day on healthy soil and mycelium that spreads nutrients to plants and trees. And we can see on a million levels how we are all connected to the health of soil. And it's a benefit to everyone and everything. And then metaphorically, in this case, it's information that is the nutrients. It's the building connections and building a community of those who want to problem solve and want to take action on behalf of all natural resources through this spread of helpful, positive, useful information.
Yeah, that was awesome.
How can people listening be involved besides just going on your website and first going through the 3 steps and taking stock of what they have, then getting things from you? How can people get involved, particularly schools? If anyone listening is affiliated with a parent organization or is a teacher or even an administrator as a school who really has some power here, what can they do?
I don't want to sound like a broken record here, but we have a ton of resources on our website, and we have a form on our site to sign up for our 28-ton project and our classroom stocking pilot program. And we have a Facebook group where we are connecting parents and teachers and schools within a community to discuss waste reduction and how it can work in all different types of classrooms and schools. And you can share this information on social media. You can help us keep trees out of trash cans and help us go viral. Even sharing this information with other people is extremely helpful. And it seems like a small act. It seems like a small thing to do, but it has an exponential impact when shared. So there's no major overhaul that needs to happen. You don't need to think, oh, I have to get my whole district on board. Just start the conversation, talk to friends, talk to family members, and help us spread the word. There's a quote on our 2023 Zero Waste Weekly Planners that says, I wish I had it in front of me because I would hate to misquote it, but and Heather, maybe you can help me with this one. By solving problems is to turn the light of truth upon them.
And yes, Ida B. Wells quote.
Yes. So it's all about understanding the problem, shining the light of truth upon it, and understanding and talking about it.
And you all have done this so well.
Yeah, you're good light shiners.
If I can add one more thing to what Nikki was saying in inviting schools to come and join. And when Nikki mentioned kind of feeling overwhelmed, like who do I talk to at my district, or how do I get my whole school on board? Our experience is that there's great success that can come from one teacher. It's a lot. We've gone and done plays for schools and PowerPoints, and you're trying to convince a lot of people to make a change, and people aren't always all on the same page. But if you get one teacher, that one enthusiastic, I can do this in my classroom teacher, that's the testing ground for the whole school. And what happens is they prove it. They prove that they're saving money, they're saving resources, the kids are engaged in the project, and it becomes the cool thing to do. Then then the grade wants to do it, then the school wants to do it. So we say, don't feel overwhelmed by trying to get a bunch of people on board. You do it. You just go to your classroom, set up that plastic marker box, start right there. You can start today, cost nothing, and start to prove that this is something that engages students and saves money and eliminates waste.
Oh, I wish you guys had been around when I was green school mom.
I wish I'd been thinking of this stuff when my own kids were really little.
This conversation has been so fun, and you guys always inspire me and teach me something I didn't know. And just talking to you makes me so happy that you exist. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
It's really amazing.
This is a conversation that we need to have often and loudly, and everybody needs to know and understand these things. And as we said, it's applicable in so many areas of our life. So thank you for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. It's a mutual admiration society here. So thank you so much for even letting us have the opportunity to talk school supplies with you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in, calling in, and spreading the good dirt. You can reach our listener voicemail at 443-459-1950. That's 443-459-1950. You can find this number in our show notes and in the link in our Instagram profile.
This show is produced by Lady Farmer with original music composed and performed by John Kingsley. Our technical partner for this series is Citizen Race Car. Post-production by Alex Brower and Jose Miguel Baez, coordinated by Gabriela Montequin.
For more from Lady Farmer, follow us on Instagram at We Are Lady Farmer. That's We Are Lady Farmer. Or join us online at www.ladyfarmer.com. We'll see you next time on The Good Dirt.